make our grammar lessons interesting and enjoyable to our students. In CLT, the following materials and activities could be used individually, in pairs, or in groups. 1. Pictures can be used as stimuli for teaching and learning grammar points. For instance, a picture of a tourist spot like Baguio City can be a good material for teaching modifiers or adjectives. 2. Authentic materials like newspapers, taped radio broadcasts, realia, or other real objects can be used for teaching grammar points. 3. Cartoon strips can be used in teaching direct speech and reported speech. 4. Language games, which are interesting to students, can likewise be used in a grammar class. Some examples of games that can be used are asking 20 questions answerable by yes or no, if only for conditionals, picture dictation for correct use of there is and there are, and many others. Here are some of the activities that can be done in a grammar class. 1. Role play is an activity that the students enjoy doing because they take roles and they are able to show their dramatic abilities performing some language functions. 2. Debate is another activity that provides the students with an opportunity to reason out and defend their stand. This is also one way of developing their critical thinking. Panel discussion is also an activity that allows the students to make an actual application of what they have learned and the actual production of the language. There is an oral interaction and a collaboration of ideas on a given topic. Now that you have learned the salient features of CLT, as well as the possible materials and activities which can be done in the classroom, I'm sure you can develop your students to become more communicatively competent. What then are the components of communicative competence? Does grammar have a place in communicative language teaching? Or is grammar taught incidentally? Let me share with you the 4 dimensions of communicative competence. According to Canale and Swain, communicative competence is composed of 4 dimensions. 1. Grammatical competence. 2. Discourse competence. 3. Linguistic competence. And 4. Strategic competence. When we return, we will be watching an interview with Dr. Sunga and Professor Bala on communicative competence. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's listen to the language experts as I interview them about communicative competence. With me is Dr. Nilda Sunga and Professor Edilberta Bala, both of whom are from the Philippine Normal University. A lot of teachers are using the communicative approach nowadays, but to some, the concept of communicative competence is not clearly understood. Many think that all they have to do is give communicative activities and the students learn the grammar. What can you say about that, Dr. Sunga?
Well, language teaching today calls for the teaching of grammar, definitely. Grammar has a role to play, and actually the problem is the implementation, of the principles behind the communicative approach. The implementation is faulty since teachers do not know how to carry out activities inside the classroom. No doubt communicative competence has to be taught, specifically grammatical competence. According to one school of thought, in the persons of Canale and Swain, grammatical competence is defined or as the ability of the speaker to know the rules of grammar, to know the arbitrary rules of grammar. And of course, every learner must be grammatically competent in order to perform effectively in communication situations.
I think we tried to make it clear to our teachers that grammar is still taught formally in the classroom because it's going to be very difficult to be communicatively competent unless you're also grammatically competent. Is that right?
Oh yes, I agree. I agree with you. I agree to that principle.
Now let's hear from Professor Bala as she talks about social-linguistic competence.
Social-linguistic competence is an interdisciplinary field of inquiry having to do with the social rules of language use. It requires an understanding of the social context in which communication takes place. It considers the role of the participants, the information they share, and the purpose or function of the interaction. Appropriacy is the key word of social-linguistic competence. A speaker must be aware of the appropriate words to say in a certain situation. He or she may be formal or informal in using the language.
Are you trying to say that it's not just important to be grammatically competent, but also to know whether it is appropriate for the situation or not?
You see, a speaker may be grammatically competent, but may not be social-linguistically competent. This means that he may be able to produce well-formed sentences, but may not be appropriate to the situation.
Now let's talk about discourse competence. Professor Bala, will you please explain to us what discourse competence is all about?
Well, discourse competence is concerned with the connections of a series of sentences or utterances to form a meaningful whole. Like social-linguistic competence, it is the subject of an interdisciplinary inquiry. Recognition of a theme of a topic, theme or topic of a paragraph, a chapter or a book, or getting the gist of a telephone conversation, a television commercial, an office memorandum, a legal document require discourse competence. Discourse competence also refers to the ability to organize oral or written discourse logically. He or she may use signals or cohesive devices to form a meaningful discourse. These connections may not be explicit, or expressions that you're going to use may not be overt. A speaker or listener can then infer meaning from this particular context.
It must be clear now to you, our viewers, that discourse competence could be shown orally and in written form. Now let's see how strategic competence works. Dr. Sunga, can you please tell us about strategic competence?
Well, strategic competence, as the name implies, refers to the ability of the learner to cope with certain difficult communication situations. For example, I can say, me go there, and in essence, I am understood, right? So actually, it refers to the ability of the learner to initiate, maintain, terminate, and redirect conversations, discussions in differing communication situations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunga and Professor Bala.